When it comes to Daryl Dixon's love life, let's just say it's a very sticky situation. Many fans over the years have wanted to see Daryl and Carol come together. Whether or not that would actually work, who's to say? Now, most of the Walking Dead community can agree that Season 10C shouldn't have even taken place. Now, I get that they were trying to provide content during COVID and keep momentum going into the final season of the show, but we didn't need it. That's why those episodes were just minimal cast and minimal locations. I mean, it just has COVID written all over it. It was mainly just having a couple of characters in a place. Father Gabriel and Aaron are in a place, talking to a guy named Maze. Carol and Daryl are in a place, and Carol is making rock soup or whatever the fuck she said. Princess, Eugene, Yumiko, and King Ezekiel are trapped in a place, and then, of course, Daryl and Leah in a place. Let's take it back for a quick second. At the end of Season 9, and at the start of Season 10, we see Daryl and Connie's friendship start to blossom. At the end of Season 9, they're still communicating with notepads and kind of exchanging smiles and enjoying each other's company, and Daryl is kind of struggling to communicate with her because he's never really had to engage with a woman who is deaf. And he's never had to look directly at a person and be very direct with the things that he's saying and clear so that she could read his lips. And I really liked that dynamic. It was just interesting. It was different. And that's what The Walking Dead so desperately needed, especially when it came to characters communicating with each other. Let's see something we haven't seen before. So, they're communicating with their little notepads, but at the start of Season 10, when Daryl is waiting for Carol to come back from her boat trip to Who Gives a Fuck, we can see that he's got a little ASL book in the back of his pocket. So clearly, we can infer that Daryl and Connie's relationship has started to deepen, and that if anything, the options there are now that Connie is his best friend, and he wants to communicate with her better, or, more likely, his feelings are starting to deepen for Connie. He's starting to find love for her. I mean, maybe he even just wants to impress her because he's just starting to kind of have those romantic stirrings. Because we've never really seen him do this with anybody but Carol before. You know, going the extra mile to really show that you love and care for somebody. Now, granted, they could have just been portraying it like they were friends, but the problem is that they kept lingering on these moments where the actors clearly are flirting with each other. And they're kind of being cute with each other in the way that a beginning couple would be. Because I don't see somebody learning sign language just for anybody. You know what I mean? I don't see Daryl learning sign language to better communicate with Kelly, who's also going deaf, or is profoundly deaf, and her hearing keeps getting worse over the show. I don't see that. He wants to just communicate with Connie. And there's nobody else that he can communicate, so he's doing this just for her. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going, interesting. Okay, so Daryl, a guy who is not very open to communication, he's very reserved, is now having to come out of his shell a little bit more in order to communicate with a woman who can't even hear. What a almost a brilliant idea. Good job, Walking Dead. Did you just stumble across a screenwriting book? This is some good stuff. On top of that, we have the frustrated tension between Daryl and Carol when Carol selfishly goes after Alpha and inadvertently gets them trapped into a cave. An explosive goes off in the cave collapses, and Connie is suspected to be trapped or dead. Daryl is confused, he's devastated, and similar to Rick, he just can't give up looking for Connie. But at the same time, he knows that likely she is dead, and it's hard for him to even look at Carol. And this further estranges their relationship. This was some interesting writing. It really was. Seeing a character act selfishly, ignoring the wishes of everybody around her, and due to her stupid actions, she gets a love interest, at least in my mind, and most people's minds, a possible love interest for Daryl, who never seems to openly love anybody in this kind of way, killed. The best part for Daryl and Carol's communication in Season 10C, in that chunk, is when Daryl calls her out, because Carol just can't stand the tension. She just wants to be forgiven, and Daryl just kind of goes, you know what? You just kind of have to own this shit. You did what you did, and she's dead because of you. And you need to feel it, okay? During this time of that same chunk, to have a flashback showing that during the time that Daryl was looking for Rick, he somehow meets a woman named Leah and has a silly love story. Well, let's even call it cute. They have a cute little love story where it's kind of like a kindergarten romance of they're kicking each other over on recess and he's pulling her pigtails. You know what I mean? She's like, he's throwing a fish at her door and, she's throwing it back and she's like, yeah, don't come around here. And he's like, I won't. And she's like, don't. He's like, good. But this didn't need to exist because you are already in the midst of building up this interesting, dynamic relationship between Daryl and Connie. We had every indication as an audience that you were going to make them a couple, and to kind of blue ball us like that, or to red herring you don't red herring a romance. You don't have two characters sort of slowly fall in love just to have the other one be the one that they hook up with. Okay, this isn't Sex in the City, This isn't Sarah Jessica Parker trying to win over Big, okay? Because what you are doing is you are undercutting the value, the gravitas of Daryl having this kind of love and affection for a woman. The last time he seemed to be this way was with Carol all the way back in Season 2 with Cherokee Rose and at the prison when they're sort of flirting with each other. Daryl went out of his way to protect Carol, and Connie seems to be one of the few women who has had a lasting impact on Daryl. But what does The Walking Dead do? They overcomplicate it. They go, let's introduce a love interest that will later be a big bad in the coming season for an entire 8-episode arc. And then we're going to have to go on this little side quest, all the while we have just abandoned looking for Connie. That's stupid. That's bad writing. That's unacceptable. That is not a good way to continue the story. Here's an idea. I don't want you to think I'm shitting on it just for the sake of shitting on it. So here's what I would say. Erase the Leah shit and replace it with Connie going missing, like she did. And Carol goes looking for Connie, like Daryl did for Sophia. Then we find Connie after already thinking she's gone. And then Carol or somebody else puts her down, and Daryl breaks down crying, just like what happened at the Pike scene. Daryl, then for the first time in years since the loss of Rick, he mourns somebody. Not since his brother, not since Rick, not since Beth has Daryl had this kind of feeling. It's been years. He finally opens up his heart. He looks, he even goes out of his way to try to learn sign language to talk to her, and she's stripped away from him. The only thing that he has to remember her by are these little wadded up pieces of paper and notepads in her room, and this ASL book that he carries around with him. Just like Rick carried around Lori's ring in his pocket in seasons 3 and 4. They talk about that on The Walking Dead. They say, fun fact, did you know that Rick carries around the bullet, not the ring, but the bullet that Carl used to put Lori down? So Daryl is mourning Connie. And Carol is there for Daryl, like Daryl was there when Carol lost Sophia. Now, granted, Carol is responsible, so that's a very tricky situation to navigate. A lot of feelings, a lot of emotions come up with that. You caused it, and then you tried to rectify it, and in a way you did by showing the lengths that you would go to do this, but it didn't matter. So now you have to wonder, does Daryl forgive her because her actions said that she cares? Or does he hold on to the grudge because it's too fucking late? And that was an option. Now granted, I didn't hate the fact that Connie ended up being in the Commonwealth and being a news reporter. That was also a good use for her. But at the same time, tell me why Daryl couldn't have just been in love with Connie. And if you just so had to have this big bad, why not just have Pope of the Reapers be the big bad like he was? And Leah just be one of his main henchmen? And never have any kind of romantic dynamic or anything like that? Maybe her and Maggie could still get into it, still have that fight through other reasons. You know what I mean? Maybe a couple of those guys were saviors, you know what I mean, who always wanted Maggie dead because she was the reason for the downfall of the sanctuary. Because they've teased that shit with Maggie before, and they've teased that shit with Carol before. Why not do it here? Better yet, why even do it at all? Devote that time entirely to the Commonwealth and really getting into some meaty story and dialogue and making The Walking Dead almost a courtroom procedural. You had the potential to do that, but you didn't go that way. And there really isn't much reason for that. You just didn't do it. I mean, we got what we got. But that's not the point. You could do better. You have. You can. You should have. Another dynamic of this is when Michonne leaves to go find Rick, we do see in the show that Daryl kind of acts as the stepdad, or her uncle, as they sort of portray it in the show, Uncle Daryl. I think what would have made a lot of sense is if Daryl and Carol together helped raise Judith. You know, Daryl could have said something along the lines of, I can't do this shit on my own. I've never had kids. I'm not good with kids. I'm good with hunting, fighting, surviving. But you're a mom. You're always a mom. And Judith, she deserves that. That's what Rick would want. And then Carol could have conflicting feelings about that because every single child that she's ever cared for has died, and she just can't bear to lose another one, especially one that means so much to the other people that she loves. She would never forgive herself if something happened to Judith. It was one thing to take on those responsibilities in the past when they were her choice. Now this is being thrust upon her. She's not ready. Then Daryl kisses her. All of a sudden, some of these doubts start to melt away. She didn't think it could work because she wasn't sure exactly where she and Daryl stood. But he starts to change that. As time goes on, we see Carol's hair grow out long. Carol always said that she had short hair because that way her abusive husband, Ed, couldn't grab it when he beat her up. She had short hair because that's what she had to do when she didn't feel safe. As time goes on, and Judith grows up, and they spend time together, kind of co-parenting Judith, Carol steps out and we see that her hair's gotten long because she feels safe with Daryl. And Daryl has cut his hair short because he's not hiding anymore. He's not trying to run from caring about people. He's leaning into it. He's turning into the skid. I think that would have been better. That's if you were even going to go that route at all. And I'm not saying that you should have. You could. But I just know, like I was saying, The Walking Dead overcomplicates it. Sometimes the simplest answer to a question is the right answer. You don't have to subvert expectations. It doesn't matter if the audience sees it coming. Some audience goers will always see, no matter what the narrative is, they will always see where the story is going, no matter what you do. But to change your story, to kowtow, so that you can sacrifice where you were going and what you had built up just to subvert theories, then you're losing. You're losing your own battle because you are pointing your guns at your own men. You are holding your writers hostage because you're like, crap, the fandom is ahead of us. They know where we're going. We'll show them. No. Show them that they're right, but they had no idea what they were in store for. You wanted Daryl and Carol together, and now you're finally getting it, but it's not because you demanded it. It's because we earned it. It's because we wrote something that is just so beautiful and fucking profound. It's like that episode 3 of The Last of Us that just like won the hearts of America over, even though it was a a gay love story. It's just a love story. It's just so good you never even saw it coming. Especially in this world. In this world where everything has gone to shit. Could you have imagined things went so well? But you didn't want to do that. The Walking Dead, you didn't want to do that. You wanted to act like you were smarter than the audience, and you painted yourself into a corner. By the time the show came to an end, Daryl and Connie barely had talked. It was as if their entire relationship, the search for her, it literally all ended in an anticlimactic hug. They didn't run over to each other. It didn't last long. There wasn't a kiss. There was nothing. They just dropped it like a bad habit. When Leah died and Daryl shot her, Maggie said, "I'm sorry" to Daryl. But what does Maggie fucking know? What does she fucking know? Now, if Daryl had come in on Carol and Leah fighting, and he killed Leah to prevent Leah from killing Carol, you might have had something there. That's his best friend. But he's going to have to sacrifice the woman that he has love and affection for, or had love and affection for, just to protect her. And then you could have gone away where maybe Daryl had a hard time looking at Carol because he's like, you know what? You don't even realize what I did for you. I gave up one of the only women in my life to ever make me happy for you. You killed Connie and now I had to kill Leah too? And it's all for you. And then Carol could not know what to do with that information. And you'd have to see the characters work through it. Because that's what real character dynamics and interpersonal communication is about. How do they work through problems? How a character solves problems says everything about a character. Who they care about, what they care about, why they care about that thing, their thought process. So we had an anticlimactic moment with Connie. Then Leah dies, and Daryl doesn't feel anything. Not really. Maybe a couple of lines to acknowledge that he killed her. And you might go, well, that's in Daryl's character. He killed he killed Morales without even a second thought. But Morales wasn't his love interest. Morales wasn't a shoehorned love interest that you are implying that Daryl had years-long relationship with. But he just shot her in the head and basically stopped giving a shit right then and there. And then we have a platonic ending with Daryl and Carol. He does say, "I love you." I'll give you that. And I have no idea where Daryl Dixon, the Book of Carol, is going to take their relationship. I don't know. I'm curious to find out. So far on that show, the writing is significantly better and far more realistic. It has a lot less of the quote-unquote Gimple speak. But the fact of the matter is, whatever decision you go with, Walking Dead, own it. Stick with it. And even if the fans beat you to the punch and they already know where you're going, write the story that you wanted to tell anyway. Do not be at the behest of your fan base, or you will destroy every single spin-off or Walking Dead universe product that you have. Those are my thoughts off the top of my head. That's all I've got for now. I hope you all enjoyed it or found it interesting. If you'd like me to make more audio podcasts like this, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and in your comment, be sure to tell me what you would like to hear me talk about next. I'm David Grayson, and we are The Walking David.